Hello.
All right. So I've got 6 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I will announce that this meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Dr. Brandt,
Here.
Dr. Aguilar,
Here.
Dr. Bertrand,
Here.
Dr. Freeman,
Here.
Dr. Flaherty,
Here.
Dr. Topliff,
Here.
Dr. Dessler.
Here.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items they'd like to pull from the consent agenda?
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Flaherty. Is there any public comment on any consent agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt,
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty,
Yes.
Dr. Topliff,
Yes.
Dr. Freeman,
Yes.
Dr. Aguilar,
Yes.
Dr. Bertrand,
Yes.
Dr. Dessler.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. With that, we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time for any members of the public to speak on any items that are not on today's agenda. If you have comments about an item that is on our agenda, we will have public comment for those items during that item. So if you'd like to speak, please hit the raise hand button, or you can put something in the chat to let us know, and we'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands, I think we will close the public comment period, and we will move to our first discussion and action item, which is the introduction of the Isla Vista Community Spaces Program Manager. I'll hand it over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. I'm really excited to introduce Maya Mashhadi Alireza. She's our new Isla Vista Community Spaces Program Manager, and she is on the call right now. So Maya, if you want to take a few minutes to introduce yourself, but before you do that, I'm just going to say, so far Maya's been with us for a week, has been absolutely amazing, has been excited to learn about all the things CSD that I've sent her to get up to speed with, and already has some excellent ideas of how we can make better use of our community spaces that I never, or none of us have ever thought of. I was like, wow, these are some new ideas that would be great to see implemented. So turn it over to you, Maya, to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, my name is Maya, and I am more than excited to get started on this position. I have only been working here for a week, but I have been diving in to some of our old articles, how this place was founded, and I am truly just in awe, and I'm very happy to be a part of such a great group. So thank you for that. And yeah, so I have a strong, background in event planning, and then also just bringing people together, whether it be for mental health or for community engagement, like what I'm doing now. So I'm really excited to get started. Some of the ideas we've been talking and bouncing around so far include having like a library cafe time with like picnic blankets. Also thinking about making weekly yoga a thing in the community center. And additionally, one other project that I'm very excited to start working on is getting maybe some artists in there to help us decorate and also display some of their work. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking to get us started. I'm really just excited to see people in the space. I've been telling Jonathan I've walked by this building I don't know how many times in my college career. So it's really nice to bring some life back into the space. But yeah, if you have any questions, or if you ever want to meet with me to talk about any ideas you have or really want to see implemented, My email is communityspaces at the regular ending. So yeah, thank you so much. It's great to meet everyone.
And I have a question for you. How do you pronounce your last name?
Yes, that's a common one, actually. My last name is Mashadi Ali Reza. If you ever I don't even want to try that, it is okay. I also go by Ali Reza, which is the last, 6, 7 letters? Yeah, the end.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Maya. Are there any other questions for Maya from our board? Director Bertrand, go ahead.
Thank you. Not a question, but just welcome to the team. I know we're really eager to see the space activated again, and it sounds like your background and skill set and passion for this community will really be put to good use in this position. So thanks for stepping up, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited. Jonathan can't give me enough. He probably already knows that.
Thank you for that, Maya. I really appreciate the creativity that you're bringing. I love all of those ideas that you mentioned, and I'm very excited to see more activity in this space as we just continue to grow our service offerings. So I'll definitely be reaching out to connect with you to get to know you better, and thanks for your service to our community.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to talking more with you later.
Excellent. Well, with that, I'll open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on the introduction of our Community Spaces Director? All right. I do see a hand, and I will hand it over to Rodney. Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm really sorry that I missed your introduction. I got here 5 minutes late, just at the very tail end. But I want to welcome you to the community as well. So glad to have someone here doing that work.
Thank you so much. I look forward to getting to know all of you a little bit better. So thanks for stepping up.
Yes, thank you for your comment, Rodney. Are there any other comments from members of the public? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and we'll close this item. Thank you so much, Maya. Do you think you could drop your contact info in the chat just for everyone to have?
Yes, I will do that now.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we're going to move to the second item, which is the professional services agreement with KTUA for Isla Vista planning report and workshop services. And before we hand it over to Jonathan, well, two things. First, I'll hand it over to Ethan for a brief moment.
Yes, thank you, President Brandt. Since this item is producing a policy that may come ultimately before my employer, I'm going to recuse myself from this item. Thank you. Thank you,
Director Bertrand. So before we hand it over to Jonathan to talk a little bit about this RFP proposal that we've received in the contract, I just really want to thank Directors Topliff and Flaherty for working as a part of the committee to review this proposal and give either of them an opportunity to say anything, just introductory remarks.
I don't know if Carrie was just speaking. Yeah, so we've been working hard on this and we're really excited at the proposal that we have. And I'm sure Jonathan will elaborate a lot more when posing or when explaining this more. But yeah, I don't think I have much to say, but I welcome any questions after.
I'd just like to add to that we were very impressed with their professionalism with the proposal that they put forward, and just from the way they structured it and how they organized things and some of the commitments they made to us in terms of keeping a stable staff on the project through the whole duration of it really showed that I think they understood what's needed for a really high quality collaboration.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Directors Flaherty and Topliff. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce the item.
Great, thank you. So we've got a couple pieces of the agenda here. We'll start with this proposal, just to go over the broad strokes of what's being proposed. And to remind everybody what we set out to do, it was a year ago when we had our special meeting with the County of Santa Barbara Planning Department, who came to our board to discuss the Isla Vista Master Plan and its status. And we had a large community response to that. And what we ended up moving forward and deciding was we need a lot of education and more information about this topic if we wanted to move forward in any way. So that's still, that was the mission here. Is this educational workshop is one of the central pieces of this, and then a report that kind of summarizes that and helps give us a path forward, just so that we know more information about land use planning and where the possibilities are for us to make an impact and what that roadmap to the future would be. So nothing in this is actually going to make any change yet, but it's going to make us prepared to be able to make a change, I guess is a good way to put it. It's building our capacity as a district and as a community. And so that's what KTUA has proposed to us. I'm just scrolling fast because there's a lot in here. I'm just trying to get to the part I want to go over with you. So as you see, the first deliverable, the main one, is the planning educational workshop. They're going to do various things to help produce their background, to improve their understanding of the community and of the situation, to give us a workshop that explains not just the master plan, but planning concepts, so that we become very well informed on the topic of planning. This is their work plan that they have for us. It's just an example, nothing's actually complete, but this is how they're going to manage their work for us. Kind of in a weird spot in the proposal. They're going to prepare an existing conditions report. So we've got a lot of our proposals and our RFPs have this component of it, where we want an existing conditions report to just explain to us what are the current zoning regulations in Isla Vista, what's the current housing stock look like, what are the current policies in place, and also some needs assessment. So just looking at what are the issues in Isla Vista. And that's not going to be a very in-depth needs assessment. You can go much more in depth than this, but they're going to just look at it and say, here are some issues that are coming up in our discussions that we have that planning could be a tool towards solving. So they're going to present those two things, existing conditions and needs assessment. And this is maybe a little misleading on how it's titled. It's mainly research. It says it's community engagement, but they're going to do research on various planning topics. And a lot of these are topics that we had put forward in our RFP that we wanted to know more about, like equity, like coastal access as it relates to equity, affordable housing. So they're going to environmental protection. They're going to go over and do a lot of research on these topics. Not a lot of research. We're going to go over it. It's a couple hours for each topic, but they're going to be able to provide to us information if we thought any of these were interesting and we wanted to go forward more with them. So they're going to do all of this. They're going to do the research. They're going to existing conditions report, make a needs assessment, present this at an educational workshop, and then there'll be a report that's made that's out of that. So we'll have the workshop, we'll learn, we'll maybe discuss a bit, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we're thinking. And then we'll have this report that comes out that gives us, let's talk about this, how we can get county input, how we can, what we need to do to get support for this master plan if we wanted to move forward, and what that roadmap would look like. So in terms of the budget, we have here, the original proposal was for $99,000, and our committee felt like, okay, that was a lot, and maybe let's revise it a little bit to fit more directly our needs. And we negotiated with them to get this down to $87,945. And this would be over 2 fiscal years. So we've got money budgeted in this fiscal year, and then there'd be other expenses in this next fiscal year in 22-23. So it's over 2 fiscal years. Just for the financial impact for the district, we've got the 88, I'm just going to say it's 88,000 because it's off by $50, but this costs 88,000. We've got 30,000 budgeted now. We just received 53,000 from the state of California for COVID relief. So we've got some extra funds in our budget. And, part of this, half of this, we're saying 40% about will be billed in the second fiscal year. So we've got the funds to cover this in our current fiscal year, and we'll be able to budget for it in the next one. That's the proposal. That's the budget. The agreement is our standard professional services agreement that Ross produced for us many years ago now, and we use over and over. It's a good one. So we've already agreed with KTUA on this agreement. And so that shouldn't be a problem for them. But yeah, I'd like, we can take any questions now. And I know the committee can help answer questions or fill in any other gaps that I might have missed on the features of this that we're excited about. But it's mainly, like I said, we're hiring this consultant to help get us up to speed, to build our capacity, and to give us a roadmap for the future of where we want to go with planning.
Thanks for that presentation, Jonathan. And I'll open it up for questions for Jonathan from the board in a moment. I want to add one thing on to the tail end of that, which is that I think when we started this process in early 2021 with the hearing with Director Plowman from the County of Santa Barbara, what I heard from the community loud and clear is that when it comes to adopting a plan for Isla Vista, we need adjustments. We need something that works for us here in the present day and in the future. And I think that the goal of this report is to move the process forward towards that in order to get the focused updates that are going to be necessary to make a plan that works for the future. But it's a lot more than that too, because it's also trying to sort of give our community the capacity to engage on a subject that is very complicated, land use planning. And especially for a community like ours that frequently has a lot of turnover, I think that really getting everyone on the same page as far as that education and that capacity, so that when people are throwing around, acronyms and talking about different concepts, everyone at least is sort of speaking the same language. Will help us have more informed dialogue as a community once we get to that point where the county is brought in to do a more focused update. So I'll just add that in just in terms of the goals, and just open it up to the board if anyone has questions for Jonathan. I see a hand from Director Freeman. Go ahead.
So it seems like a reasonably large amount of this. I don't know. I'm not certain about as far as the percentage of work or cost or something like that. But there's a lot of effort that seems to be going into this that is into research and findings on different types of planning issues that come up in our area, and attempting to consult on the engagement and analyze the results. And I guess the issue that I'm having is that this feels like work that we would do if we got an area planning commission. That if we succeed in the process of having the power to be planners, then we would take on the work of attempting to make a plan. But this seems to be doing a lot of, and I might just be misunderstanding. This seems to be doing a lot in the scope of work with relation to the actual analysis and planning. And I feel like when I think back to the meeting when we were first talking about this, and I feel like it was kind of defended that we would do this on the perspective of there would be a consultant would come in order to tell us what planning is like and how we would be able to, like, how small communities integrate into the planning processes of counties, and what the roadmap might be for somebody like us, or a district like ours, to be able to take on an area planning commission and things like that. And the all of those things kind of felt like existing background knowledge and experience, like we were bringing somebody in order to work us through and strategize with us on how to achieve becoming the area planning commission. But on this scope of work, I might just be misunderstanding something, but it feels more like assuming that end result and then spending a sizable amount of money. I mean, if you compare this to the budget, what I'd heard for the master plan, I mean, this is a tenth of the master plan's budget over the course of many years. In order to do that planning work, that I'm just not certain we're just going to succeed in getting that area planning commission, because I haven't heard ever support from the county for it, whether it was from their planning department that came to our AB3 meetings, or from many of the supervisors who even talked about it. I know recently we've been kind of excited by the idea that we had a strong set of supervisors that would be supportive of our interests. But I mean, as I mentioned, I think 2 years ago, we it's not something that we can't always count on. I mean, now we've been shifted to the second district, and who knows what's going to happen with Joan's office and supporting us versus the complexities of maintaining your vote in North County. This current second district supervisor is looking at potentially running for assembly, and the previous second district supervisor did not want us to have the area planning commission. Wolf actually at the LAFCO meetings tried to strip us of that power, I'm just, this seems like putting the cart before the horse in that sense. But I don't know. Am I misunderstanding it? Hopefully I'm misunderstanding it.
Yeah, I definitely hear you what you're saying. And we definitely struggled with this research section. And I think it is also mislabeled still community engagement, and they sent us the updated one. It's research. I'm not consulting on community engagement, but we did struggle with this, I think, when we discussed it as a group, and we actually cut down this budget on the task 4 significantly. I think all of these numbers were almost double. So it was a lot of 4s and 6s, and we brought them down to more like the 2s. So that's one piece, but and I think we did comment that maybe they have maybe this information already to present us information about like 15-minute neighborhoods, but it does add up to 2 hours. All these little 2 hours here and there, they do add up to this larger number, and it is all towards and again, I'm like I say, it is mislabeled, and it's hard. That's confusing. I'll need to fix that. But as you can see in like 4.16, all of it is towards presenting this information to us in the educational workshop. And it might not be specifically like, this is how you would get to an area planning commission, but also it's like, do we want an area planning commission? These are some of the issues we would be able to tackle. So I think it is part of that capacity building for us to engage in the whole topic of planning as we advocate for that, if that's what we wanted to do, is how I saw it, is just to, because I couldn't hold a strong enough conversation with the planning department on why on these issues, and I don't know many people who could, and so this would be helping us be able to have that conversation intelligently with them based on this new knowledge, is how I saw it. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
On that point, is there, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to speak to one thing that Director Freeman mentioned about the topics. We all had that same question that Jonathan just mentioned of, well, why do you need to do research about coastal access? Isn't that something that you already know about? But I think their goal is to talk about those concepts in relation to Isla Vista to help contextualize some of those issues that might impact our decision of what direction we want to go to contribute towards the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll add too that if we learned all this and we felt that this was outside of our scope of what we wanted to do as a district, it might change our mind. It might say maybe we don't want to get too into this. That's a possibility. I hope, my hope is that we don't, but it could be that, you know, we learn all this and we say, okay, this might be a little out of reach right now, and let's put this off because we couldn't, we didn't feel like this was something that's a right fit for the district right now. So.
I want to be clear that I'm definitely interested in doing an area planning commission. I just, practically speaking, am concerned about our ability to get it due to all of the politics that I've seen go down or surrounding this, and all of what I've heard about Montecito Planning Commission, which actually came up during our RD3 meetings and was kind of like verified. And so I'm just, it's not that I'm sitting here saying, I don't know if we want to do any of this, let's just not do anything. It's more that this seems to be assuming that we're going to get to do something that I'm not certain we're going to get to do. And I kind of thought that the first phase might be that we would bring somebody in to just do a 4-hour workshop with us and the community in order to, with their existing knowledge of both planning and the area, in order to kind of like come up with what the strategy would be for how area planning commissions would work, and how they how you like leverage the powers that we have to achieve it. And I feel like this is more about planning than about planning to plan. But I might, yeah.
I mean, I would say it's tough because we're in a weird spot where we don't control this, and we want to move forward, and the county's not prioritizing this, and we need to do some things to help push them, and us becoming more informed and able to advocate on this might be what helps us get more through to them, that, hey, we're taking this seriously, we're learning, we're getting prepared for this. So I think I agree. It is, nothing is guaranteed here at all. But it seems like but I do hear what you're saying. And that's what I originally maybe thought too. Like, this is going to be a simple 4-hour workshop, but also in speaking to them, it is more complex. Like maybe we want to get a workshop that's tailored to us, and like, you know, coastal access as it relates to Isla Vista, you know, transportation planning issues as they relate to IV. So, and how they relate to the master plan, and how they relate to our current land use regulations. So I think then it starts becoming bigger than them just explaining a few things and them wanting to know all the context to explain it the best they could. So then it ends up costing this much. I mean, it is a possibility if we felt that this is maybe bigger than we expected to tackle, and we could say, hey, we want something much more simple. That's also a possibility that we felt like. But I think there is some fixed cost here of how much it would take to prepare to intelligently present to us. But it might not cost the whole 87. But this is the full scope preparation for a workshop.
And I'll save my comments for later. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Director Deschler, I think you had a hand up.
Yeah, I was going to just piggyback a little bit on what Jay was mentioning. That my understanding when we embarked on this idea, this concept, was that we would bring in an entity that would be able to advise us and provide us with a level of expertise in planning issues that we on the board don't have. And that would then help us in kind of plotting out a future course of action with the county. And so my hope is that so I was thinking that this role was more of a strategic advisor, as opposed to an entity that was gathering data and is going to do these presentations. I guess I misunderstood. I'm very much hoping that this entity can be a strategic advisor to the board, given their level of expertise in knowing how small communities liaison and work with a larger county on these issues. So that's kind of that was what my expectation was. I don't know if that's incorporated in here. I just really want to make sure that the board is getting the technical level of understanding so that the board can effectively advocate for Isla Vista with the county.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Director Deschler. And I will add one thing in, which I think the group of us that worked with Jonathan to put together the scope of work for this RFP heard when we came to the board the desire to also have these metrics, or this existing conditions report of how things are now, and specifically that is reflected in task number 2, the existing conditions report, which I think is what some of the comments are getting towards.
But would say, like, I think when we interviewed them, and they did seem like they did understand our goal, which was to get to a point where we can have a community plan approved in IV and helping us get to that. I think they did hear that. Maybe they thought, when we put this out, we said we need to learn a lot more. They felt, okay, this is how much these folks need to learn. This is what they felt we needed to learn to do that. But I think they did hear it from us that we were looking for a strategic plan on how to move forward, and that we were kind of stuck in a way, and we needed a way to get unstuck. So I think they heard that for sure.
I see a hand from Director Freeman. Are there any other directors with hands before I go back to Director Freeman? Okay, go ahead, Director Freeman.
So I based on what Jonathan was just saying, I think that there's, the term strategic plan, I think, and strategy and everything can maybe be a little bit ambiguous. And so, like, given the idea that we're going to do planning, that you need a large amount of information and background, and you need to have a framework in which all the information will go into in order to figure out how you will actually make that plan. And that's kind of the impression that I'm getting from what this is trying to give us. Whereas I think the strategy that I was kind of sold on before, which maybe isn't what other people are looking for, but it was more along the lines of, like, how does a small community use an area planning commission in order to have influence over planning in a county planning department? And what are the ways in which other communities have obtained area planning commissions? And what would be a good first step, something that we could do given the powers that we have, in order to make it more likely that the county will give us an area planning commission? And the fact that I searched through this PDF file looking for area planning, and I don't see the term, makes me concerned that this is a scope of work document for a planning commission, as opposed to a scope of work for a community service district that currently does not have a planning power, that is hoping really, really hard that we will be granted a partial planning power by the county. I think it'd be important for us to, for example, get it was part of what I feel like I've been told on, was get a brain dump on what are the laws related to area planning commissions, and what can they do versus what does the county do. Your average area planning commission, what does their staff do versus what does the county planning staff do? When you look at the costs of area planning commissions, what percentage of those costs are borne by the local community versus what percentage of them are borne by the county? When there's a decision that the area planning commission makes that the planning department of the county does not like, what precedence level do each of these have, and how do appeals to the board of supervisors operate? And, like, these are all things that, like, I feel are important to understanding of what our power is, and what we're going to get out of our power, and how we might, again, obtain this power, as opposed to we spent a bunch of time looking into a specific planning change that could be done with related to coastal access and equity. We're going to try to figure out. We're actually going to put into your report the conflicts in, for example, parking permit programs, and how that prevents people from getting access to the beach. And, like, that's something that to me isn't part of the strategy of how to obtain an area planning commission. That's something that's the work of a planning commission. So, yeah.
You make a lot of good points, and it is not reflected in the budget that they will make a specific effort on this research 4.1 through 15, a research on area planning commission. So if that's something we want to add back in, I think it's a point well taken that we would want, those 5 questions you mentioned on area planning commissions for sure answered as part of this. And we might want to say, okay, let's add in a 4 point whatever and add some more hours to that, or move hours from other things to that. That makes sense to me.
I would go further though and say that maybe those are the things that we should be trying to get now. And a lot of the other parts of this document are something that we don't commit to right now. We work on that strategy. We try to figure out the extent to which that fits into the strategy. We attempt to get an area planning commission. We come back to it later. But, yeah.
I guess when I read the document and based on the conversation that myself, Catherine and Carrie and Jonathan had with the consultant, I think maybe one of it's strange that it's not explicitly mentioned. That probably is a mistake. It should be explicitly mentioned, but I think it's underlying the entire document. It's the entire point of, sections 5 and 6 to draft a report that explains what are the factors and refinements needed for a plan, for a structure to get that political support. I think that part of it is explicitly mentioned. But I agree with you that it should be explicitly mentioned.
Maybe verify, or do you talk about the plan and the structure to get that political support behind a new plan? Because, like, for example, we do have this, or to explain, not for example, we do have this issue, right, which is that we've attempted to, as a community, including the county, to have a master plan adopted in the area for a long time, and we've kind of failed at that. And so, as now, our board, the community, the county has kind of failed at obtaining a past master plan. And so you could then ask the question of what is required, what is the knowledge and background and issues with that plan that are required in order to be able to get the support required to make a new plan, to pass a new plan. But we, right now, as I've said, don't really have a planning power. And so I think it's a very, very different question to say, what is the background knowledge and strategy required in order to convince a county to hand over part of its planning responsibility to a local community, particularly given what we know about what happened, the Montecito Planning Commission and how they actually obtained it, and the county doesn't like us having a planning commission, and then one of the supervisors tried to take the power away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like it feels like it's a different problem than getting the master plan adopted. I mean, you could almost imagine a worst case scenario is that we spend a large amount of money on all this background, hand it to the county, and the county's like, thank you, and then hands that to their planning department, and we never hear from them on the ability to do area planning commission, and they use our documents and then blame us for the data that's in it over the course of another round of master planning, without us really getting that scope of involvement. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we can get the leverage, in maybe is the term required, in order to be able to get that power. So more thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Definitely a lot to consider. Maybe it would be helpful for us to hear from the public before we continue discussion on this. If there are any members of the public that would like to speak on this item, feel free to hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat, and we'll call on you. I see a hand from Kimberly Kiefer. Hi, Kimberly, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kimberly Kiefer, and I'm the General Manager of the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District. I assumed this role in February of 2020. I'm speaking today as a General Manager of the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District. Since its creation in 1972, our independent California Special District has carried out its state mandate to provide recreational and park opportunities to the community of Isla Vista. I have not had the opportunity to address your board collectively, and I'd like to share with you the work our district has been conducting, despite some of the challenges with impact of COVID within our operations, including programming, and also just requesting some clarification on this proposed item with KTUA. In the past 24 months, we're really proud of the work we've collectively done with our staff, board, and community to address deferred maintenance backlogs, prioritize Measure O funding for recreational events, park amenities within a top 5 park priority list. We've completed renovations to improve public garden space and access for individuals and groups, conducted a ground summit to identify the much needed operational improvements that are needed in our parks, address tree canopy health, and also created a public art program pathway to enhance our park user experience. Our district has safely provided free recreational all-inclusive events starting in summer of 2021 that included movies in the park, summer concert series, our haunted pumpkin patch, and Love Lights and Community kicked off our winter holiday season. In those events, we served roughly 3,000 community members during a 6-month period. We are recipients of 3 grants award with Ryer and per capita in the amount of $428,000 that have been approved by the board to renovate Pardall Gardens, and recently a recipient of the SPP grant for $4.2 million for the Children's Park renovation project. I would like to request that the board include IVRPD as a key agency partner, given that our scope of district responsibilities seem to be reflected in many of the proposed scope of work tasks, including the following: planning and educational tasks, point 1.3, 4, 5, 6, and 8, existing condition reports on 2.2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. A needs assessment report specifically calls out recreation and park healthy community needs, 4.6, including natural area, urban forestry, coastal access, and defensible space. 5.2 and 5.5 planning report that includes, to my understanding, that the CSD board would be giving direction to staff to lay out efforts needed for district staff to proceed and prepare a plan document that reflects information to the community and the county of Santa Barbara. It would also be helpful to better understand how the CSD plans to use this report and how it will be implemented. How will this information be presented in the media and to other local governments? How will our existing work be portrayed in this report and study? How are you going to reach audiences, including long-term residents, families, and non-English speaking community members? And how will this enhance our collective strategic planning as districts serving the same community? We really hope that this process can be an opportunity for our districts to work together to provide the best possible service to the Isla Vista community. And I thank you for the consideration.
Thank you for those comments, Kimberly. And big congratulations to the grant and all the work that the Recreation and Park District has accomplished over the last year.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this item? All right, I'm seeing none, so I will bring it back to the board. And Jonathan, can you speak a little bit to the element of agency partners as far as the project goes?
Yeah, I think we are going to be running the community engagement part of this, and they're going to be participating as we've been doing with our other RFPs. So we're really interested in making sure we have robust involvement. IVRPD definitely, having been I don't want to say co-author, but was one of the agencies involved in the IV master plan, would be very important to be involved in this, but so would other government agencies. And so it's going to be a key piece of this. And we'd want all the stakeholders to be participants of the workshop. So it's not just for our board members, but it's for the public, but also we're going to make sure that the key stakeholders are available in there to get that information to learn. So yeah, this process is not just about our board. It is about the community capacity building and involvement, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jonathan. And all in the conversation, because this is such a complex topic, and because it's kind of meta, we're talking about planning for planning. I will want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what is recommended in task 5, the draft planning report. This is not the same thing as the district or the consultant drafting a plan in the planning sense of the word. This is not a document that would be adopted as land use regulations by any agency. This is a document with recommendations. I think that figuring out exactly how to brand that in order to set people's expectations in this process is going to be really important, so that we can clearly communicate with the public and with our partners about what the goal of the process is. But I just really want to emphasize too that I think that element of including our partners and really ensuring that that the entire community is included is really core to this, and is kind of the main goal also behind the workshop as well. Wanted to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we use these planning terms, and we're all educated in that sort of way. So with that, I think maybe a good way to bring the conversation forward, because I know we talked a lot about it, is maybe to ask if there are board members, I guess, at this point that have specific recommendations in scope that you'd like to see addressed before we move forward with an agreement with the consultant. I saw Kirsten right before Jay, so I'll give it to Kirsten and then followed by Jay.
So this is, my concern is that this misses the mark a little bit, this agreement. I just envision something a lot smaller in scope and more directed. And I worry, I hope this is the question that you asked. I worry a little bit that the district is doing a lot of work on similar fronts with this plan, this RFP, the parking, the STEP grant. There's a lot of the similar questions being asked in multiple kinds of reports. And I worry that the board and the district just might be biting off just a little bit more than it can chew. That's what I'm concerned about with this. This seems like a huge effort, and I was struck by what our general manager Kimberly mentioned, just about all the coordination of multiple agencies. This is a huge deal. Even asking these questions is a really huge deal. And I just think that this, what we have here in front of us is just too big for where we're at. And I'm hoping that we could scale it back to ask some more specific questions without doing all the research from this company. So those are my thoughts.
Director Freeman, I think you're next.
Yeah, as far as the question about scope additions, I mean, I guess the biggest thing for me is kind of just is a scope realignment. And so I feel like I'm in agreement with some of what Director Deschler is saying here about a smaller scope with more specific questions. And I think what I'm really looking for out of it is kind of what I was talking about earlier with the various direct issues of what are area planning commissions. I'll also say that I think a lot of this, the bigger planning questions and how this gets coordinated with other agencies, makes a lot of sense in the scope of and having an area planning commission. An area planning commission is a potentially separate board of people that we are funding. Our power is to fund the area planning commission, and that might not be us that is the area planning commission. I'm not necessarily against it being us. There's some work I've seen in the past on something called a county town, where you have a single board that acts simultaneously as an area planning commission, a municipal advisory council, and a community services district in order to try to cobble together most of the powers of the city. I'm not necessarily against us being the area planning commission, but we might not be the area planning commission. And in the scope of a separate area planning commission, I think the questions of how agencies are involved in it, I think starts to make more sense, or at least it raises fewer questions. But yeah, I'm really hoping still for something where we bring somebody in to run a workshop in order to talk about area planning commissions and how they work and how you can obtain one and what things we might want to do before we have the area planning commission versus things we want to do after the area planning commission, thought processes like that. And I think it's fair to pay for that scope, in the sense that there might not be people who have existing thoughts off the top of their head. I'm kind of under the impression that community service area districts, operating area planning commissions isn't too common. So it might not be that there are people who we could just like bring in next week in order to start riffing on the top of their head. They might actually require a lot of research. Maybe it even costs a lot of money. I don't know. But to me, that's the scope of work for a term for this kind of document that is for some reason not coming to me right now. That I was kind of hoping to be able to analyze and consider. So.
Thank you for those comments, Director Freeman. Are there other comments from directors?
I'd like to say one more thing, but I want to give other people a chance to speak.
Sounds good. Director Topliff, go ahead.
I think we've had a great discussion here, and it's certainly made me think about a lot of things in a different way and more deeply than what we've talked about already. So I think that that's been very valuable, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the comments about working in partnership with IVRPD as we move ahead. I think that that's very important for the success of this project. And I think it's very important that we are in good communication with the consultant about some of those concerns that we have, and especially about the Area Planning Commission, to make those more explicit. But as I look at it, I don't know that I feel that it's really appropriate to pare this down so much, because it seems like all this work is necessary. And my only caveat would be, as we go down this path, I mean, we can pull the plug at any time. You know, at any phase of this, we can say, you know, given where we are right now and what we've learned and how things are developing, we're not going to go any further. We don't want you to do this work, or this is not going to be relevant. So I feel like by entering into this contract, we're not necessarily locked into doing all this stuff, but it seems to me like all of this stuff is important for us to do on the general path that we have laid out for ourselves.
Thank you for that, Director Topliff. And I'll add one thing to that too, because Catherine and Carrie can attest that we were all given homework by Jonathan to look at the budget that had been prepared and try to see what are the areas where we could try and pare down. And what we did is we looked at the budget, we looked at all the tasks that were broken down. They had the chart that I think the board has that has all the different hours that are spent on each task. And then we looked at the scope of work that the board approved and said, where are the areas where there's fat that we can trim? And Jonathan in particular took the lead and got a good portion of it. We gave him some more feedback, and we got to that pare down where it first came in around 100,000 and now it sits at around 88. Of course, doing this all within the scope of work that the board had approved at our board meeting. So I'll just say that to where I think we've trimmed it down to where it can be. I appreciate the desire to have more specific, to make sure that the consultant is specifically focusing on those issues. And I actually pulled up our request for proposals that we submitted and reviewed that we mentioned those things in there. So I know the consultant has that information specifically about the Area Planning Commission and about our goal of trying to figure out how we can contribute to the planning process going forward. But I also just want to friendly challenge those on the board that might want to pare it down to say that this is the scope that we had approved and with the additions that the board wanted at the time. So I'll just leave it at that, kind of my thoughts based on what I've heard. And I'll go to Director Deschler.
Yeah, so a couple of things I just wanted to add. So I was at the meeting with the county when we had that part of the planning overview, and it was very confusing. And I think it was me that brought up at our workshop, boy, we need help in understanding some of these planning terms, because this is a huge issue for the district. And there were so many terms and so much history that it really made it hard to really understand what the county was presenting and what the role of the district was. And so my thought in bringing that up last year was we need like a planning 101 class for the board to really understand some of these terms and to understand the role of the district with the county and how we move forward. We know there is a long, torturous history with the county and Isla Vista on planning issues. There's been more failures than successes. And there's a whole reason, there's many, many reasons for the failures. There's politics, there's different interests, there's all different kinds of things. We owe it to the board to make sure that we're doing this the right way. We're doing it with enough staff and enough forethought to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap that many others have fallen in terms of failing. And I think, yes, we did agree last year to move forward, and we did have a number of things that we wanted to consider. But we're in a different position right now because we're down a key member of staff. This is a huge project, and it's a huge project that requires deftness, political and strategic deftness in order not to fail. And $90,000 is a lot of money to just say, well, we might as well because we approved it. I think we owe it to ourselves to put a little bit more time into this and think about if we can scale this down, and maybe we can break it up into blocks and not spend $90,000, a lot of staff time without really laying the political and strategic foundation with key partners to make sure that we have a path for success. I worry right now when we have a fellow district in Isla Vista come into this board meeting and say they don't know much about this, they don't know their role, that we're considering something that we haven't put in a foundation for success for. And that's my concern. And I also really worry that we are putting a lot of work on our staff. We have the parking program, parking study. It's asked some of the same questions that are in this report, and we're asking those as well. And so all of a sudden we're getting a lot of overlapping information from similar entities. And I just worry that we're getting a little bogged down, and we need to simplify, look out for our staff, and think about maybe postponing this for a quarter.
Thank you for your comments, Director Deschler. Are there other comments from board members? Well, not seeing any, I think I really want to reiterate my agreement with Director Deschler that we need to have strong partnerships with all public agencies in Isla Vista that are related to this. And particularly, I know just from researching the history of planning in Isla Vista that Isla Vista Recreation and Park District was a major partner in the creation of the Isla Vista Master Plan. And so much to the tune of, we'd always used to hear from Bob about how much money the master plan costed the county and how it didn't go anywhere. Well, it wasn't just the county; it was Isla Vista agencies too, like RVRPD, that were contributing funding to that and helped that shoulder that burden. Which is not to say that that's the goal here. The goal here, I think, from us is to get the ball rolling towards where we want to be with where we can contribute best to planning. But hearing from my colleagues the different concerns that they have, I personally am supportive of moving forward with this. I think that when I hear the different concerns that are raised, and I see the solution, and it's in the proposal that we have in front of us, to get more educated with a workshop, to get us a path forward, to try and figure out what sort of support and research that we need conducted in order to achieve our goals. I think that's here, and I know the price tag is high, but I also can't think of a better way for us to use the funding from COVID release after this year that's been so difficult towards investing in the future of the community by saying we're going to plan for the future. So I'm interested in hearing if there are any specific adjustments that my colleagues would have, but I think at this point I'm prepared to support this. Are there any other comments from board members? Not seeing much. I guess with that, I entertain a motion if anyone has a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we postpone this item until after we approve a consultant for our parking project.
I will second that motion.
All right, there's been a motion made by Deschler and a second by Freeman. Maybe if I could ask a question to Director Deschler, is there a specific reason that this is tied to the parking project?
My concern that I mentioned is I'm concerned about our staff capacity. And the parking program the parking RFP that we're working on is taking a good amount of time, a good amount of staff time. I'm a little concerned about as we move into spring, that we have a couple items on the agenda, namely Spring Festival. I'm worried about staff capacity, but I tie it to the parking program because I think that is going to produce some interesting information, and it's almost a beta test on how IVCSD is going to be working in partnership with some key stakeholders, namely the university and the county. And I think it just buys us a little bit of time.
All right. And Jonathan, can you read back again what that motion is?
Yeah, the motion is a motion to postpone this item until after a consultant is selected for the parking study.
Okay. Is there any discussion from the board on the motion? Director Flaherty.
I was just curious on the timeline of the parking. I know that there were a lot of submissions, but I'm not entirely sure if there's an update on that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. It's definitely a little longer of an evaluation period for the parking study because we did get 4 and we did only get the 1, which I should have mentioned that in here, that we only received 1 proposal for this one. So we didn't select between multiple. But for the parking study, we received 4, and our committee did feel like it's important to shop the proposals with community members and community stakeholders before making a decision. We are just starting to do that at the end of last week and this week, and that's our plan. So I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about it, but we've made a list of important stakeholders, and we want to start setting up different meetings with our parking committee and them to kind of just interview them and hear from them. What are the parking, what are the contours of this parking study that need to be looked at, and we at least have a meeting with the county public works who's overseeing parking on January 20th, and so I would just guess that it'd be the first meeting in February. The earliest we can get something for the board to approve a recommendation would be the February 8th. I don't want to commit 100% to February 8th, but I'd say that's the realistic date. It wouldn't be any of the other January meeting. So I guess it would say, how does our meeting with County Public Works go on January 20th will help, because they're the main agency overseeing this right now. While we do have a lot of other stakeholders, they're also the ones in charge of parking, and we want to make sure we're on the same page with them.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Director Flaherty. Director Topliff.
And just thinking about the timing, I know that there is a sense of the timing as evidenced in the proposal that we're now looking at and how it fits in with summer and breaks and so forth to make sure that we're doing work when we have the maximum participation available. So I'm trying to think about what a delay would look like and what it would do to that kind of schedule. And then I'm also trying to understand how getting the consultant for the parking study would give us a track record on working collaboratively with IVRPD and the county. Would that not have to be a little further down the line when we actually were working with them more deeply over a longer period of time? And then I'm also wondering about the concern about staff being overwhelmed and just how staff is feeling about the work that we're carving out. So that's a lot of questions.
Should I answer any questions? I want to answer about staff. I can tell you that, so in this proposal, I think, Jonathan, what you just said is that there was only, this wasn't a competitive proposal. We received one for this project. Okay. So on the parking, I believe we received 4. And this company, K2A, is one of the 4. God, I hope I was supposed to, I hope I'm just not in trouble that I just said that.
No, it's all good.
I think that that'll be interesting to see kind of as we meet with this company, what in relation to the parking program. I think that'll be interesting to hear from them. The reason, again, I think Jonathan should mention about staff. I think the parking program is a small subset of overall parking planning issues in Isla Vista, and to me it's a smaller project, politically sensitive, lots of potholes. Oh, I like that pun. But it might help us to kind of bring out some of the issues that we may face with other entities in the county and in Isla Vista on a smaller scale, as opposed to this larger initiative of looking at planning in Isla Vista and the planning process and understanding planning terms and area planning commission. That is a huge project. And so I thought moving forward on the parking to get a sense of how that goes might inform the process that we're looking at today. So that's one. And staff, I can't answer that. That's something that Jonathan needs to address, obviously.
And I can address in terms of like what we're working on as a staff right now. You know, we've got the STEP grant is really at the peak level of work right now. This quarter and next would be where the most amount of budget is spent and effort is expended on outreach and the actual, transportation consulting piece of it. So we've got the STEP grant, we've got the Spring Festival, which is on April 2nd. That will be, we've got a consultant hopefully for that too, but we'll be working with them extensively. And it's something that, Maya could be a little involved in, but there are so many elements to that, like road permits and reservations that are, something I'd need to handle. We've got the parking study, obviously, we're already going. And we do have all of our other programs. And that's something it's something we should definitely address in our retreat is, we do have a lot we want to do as a district. We always do. And that was something would be another thing we'd want to do at our retreat is analyze where our staff time is going and making sure it's aligned with our goals and, knowing that it's, half as much right now because we don't have Deborah with us and we've got a consultant, but they're handling really specific smaller projects that they're not part of our staff. So that is something we need to do at a retreat is to look at what we've got and what we want to do and how we match those up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kirsten and Jonathan. And Carrie, your hand's still up, but did you have another question you were going to ask? Okay, Director Flaherty.
Yeah, I was just curious if we were to push this back, would this mean that the workshop in the proposal that's scheduled for mid-May be pushed to fall quarter? And I think just because a majority, just the population in Isla Vista changes a lot over the summer versus the quarter. So I don't know if that it would push it back that much. I don't know if that question really makes sense, Jonathan.
Yeah, if we can change the timeline, as I mean, it's also up to the consultant and what they're, they plan out their work many months in advance and decide if projects can be part of their work plans or not. But it could be something where we say, if we did do this, we'd tell them we'd want that workshop in October instead of in August. Or even if we started, or let's say we delayed like 3 months or 4 months, we could, I mean, we're already asking them to make the workshop very early. And when we asked, we had asked them, they had originally proposed mid to late June for the workshop. And we said, oh, wait, we actually wanted it in May. And they felt that May was very hard for them to meet. Like it's a tight timeline for them to get all this done by May to give us the workshop. So, and I only got that today in an email like a few hours ago, but if we gave them a longer timeline to do the workshop, I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Catherine. I'm definitely concerned about that too, just because the timeline is so tight on that. And I really view the educational workshop as like a core part of the project. Like in order for the other elements of it to succeed, we need to be educated. We need a community that's educated on these complex topics. So I guess that's giving me pause about the motion. I would also ask too, because I put a lot of weight in what Directors Deschler and Director Freeman have mentioned about parking, because they're on the parking committee. I know Director Aguilar is also on the parking committee. Do you have any, do you have any thoughts about sort of how the proposal is?
I just mostly need to second what Director Deschler is saying, which is that my first concern is that in parking, we've been doing the work of reviewing 4 different proposals. And so when I learned that this particular RFP only got 1 proposal, it makes me wonder what else is out there and what our options really are on like a just on that kind of broadness scale. So I do have some of those similar concerns, and it does seem like planning is a larger umbrella or balloon than parking, but they're both, to me, complex issues and things that like I'm learning about parking as we go over these studies and what's possible and what kind of questions we need to ask. So I do have those same concerns about spending this much money on 1 proposal so far.
Thank you for that, Director Aguilar. So I guess what I'm hearing from the board is the concern about the timeline for this if it is delayed, in order to make sure that it fleshes with the timeline of our constituents, and the concern about moving forward with the timeline that's outlined right now. And so I can say I'm still a little bit confused, but I will also say that I put a lot of stake in what our parking subcommittee is supporting, because it's an incredibly important project, and there are possibly things that we don't know, I guess, about how that's unfolding, because there's certain things that they can't share with us in terms of the proposals and their discussions, since there hasn't been an award made yet to a particular consultant. So reluctantly, I'm willing to support the motion with the understanding that we may try to go back to the consultant and find out that there's not a way for us to get on this work plan. I mean, that's the risk that we take here, is that we, will have spent all of the executive staff time from Jonathan in order to put all of this together, to bring it forward after our board had held hearings and supported a request for proposals saying, yes, we want to do this and we want to find a consultant to do it. And then that's just the opportunity cost that we're going to have to eat. So that's, I guess, why I'm putting the parking committee on the spot, because it seems like that's sort of the desire and where it's coming from, I guess. But with that said, I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. I kind of feel like at this point we're a little bit talking in circles.
Is it actually true that we, as the parking committee, aren't allowed to talk with various things? I mean, if nothing else, I specifically asked Jonathan about whether the proposals that we received for public record. He said they were. Thankfully, if that was wrong, I haven't actually ended up. I was thinking of sending them to some people, but I actually hadn't gotten around to doing that. So, but I was kind of under the impression that we weren't really having a problem, at least bringing it to the board like this. But
maybe can Ross or Jonathan speak to that?
Just to clarify, Jay, were you asking like we bring the 4 proposals of the parking study to the board, or discuss there?
No, I know, like earlier, Kirsten, for example, had was concerned that she maybe shouldn't have said the name of one of them, and I was like, wow, I thought that we could actually hand the proposals off to people. And then Spencer was just saying that he's aware that maybe we're unable to talk about the stuff that's been going on at the parking community. But I was kind of under the impression that as long as we're at the meeting of the full board, we can talk about anything that happened at the parking committee as long as it's agendized related to this topic that we're having. So like, I was verifying, is it really the case that there's something we're not supposed to be talking about right now? I don't think we have yet. And I also haven't gotten around to sending the parking proposals to people yet. But I was kind of under the impression that that wasn't the problem.
Yeah, I'll let Ross answer more, but as long as you're not evaluating the proposals right now, like you're saying this one is better than that one, we're obviously not agendized to talk about that, but you can state facts that we have 4 proposals and these are the people who proposed. In our process that we've given to the people who've made proposals to us that we put in our RFPs, it says the evaluation criteria and how we're going to evaluate them. So we don't want to step over that and how we're going to evaluate them, but it is information that we can share that there were this many from these groups, but we probably don't want to get into evaluating right now. So, and we never put anything in our RFP that this was a confidential submission either. So
yeah, Jonathan's right about that. I apologize, my camera's been malfunctioning today, but Jonathan's explanation is accurate, and there shouldn't be a concern about the disclosure of any information. I won't add anything more to what Jonathan said, as he said it very well, except to say that just recall that under the Public Records Act, everything is deemed to be a public record and should be disclosed. It's only if there is an exception that applies, and those exceptions are applied discretionarily, which is to say the public agency can elect not to. There are a number of reasons why certain information is in the public interest not to be disclosed, but the information that Director Deschler mentioned, and also the information that Jonathan mentioned about the scoring criteria and everything, there's really no concern there about keeping that information confidential. If anything, it enhances the public discourse and the board's consideration.
Thanks for that, Ross. And I guess my comment was just in reference to the fact that I think there was a comment Kirsten made about how we would get credibility or something, or build relationships with partners to accomplish this. Or maybe I'm still just a little bit confused. I'm going to try something just to move us forward. I would make a substitute motion that we approve the proposal as is, and I'll see if I get a second on that.
Really quick, you might want to hold off for a second because Kirsten just came back, so you might want to make sure she knows you.
Okay.
Yeah, she popped off and she just got back on.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a substitute motion that we adopt the proposal and enter the contract. And I see a hand for Director Flaherty. Is that a second or a question?
I just have a question. Did we need to go to public comment on the first motion? Or
this is a substitute motion, so if it's made and seconded, then we would go into public comment. If it doesn't receive a second, then we'll go to public comment afterwards on the original motion. I'm kind of just trying to gauge where people are at.
Can you repeat the motion again? Just really quick. I know it's simple, but I want to get the exact wording.
The motion is to enter into the contract with KTUA for these planning services as stated in the proposal.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So with that, I'll open up public comment. If there's any feedback on either of the motion, you can hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. And I see a hand from Rodney Gould. Go ahead, Rodney.
I guess my main concern about it is that you only had one person respond to the RFP for such an important piece of work that you're doing, and I'm wondering if it might be a good idea to kind of reformat the RFP a little bit until you can get more than one proposal. I also wasn't aware, and this is that you could just do a substitute proposal while you already had a first and a second on the floor without acting on that. That's a whole new thing that I've never heard of, but I guess maybe it's there.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Rodney. So yeah, I guess I'm just trying to gauge, because it seems like we've got two groups on the board and we've got 6 of us. So maybe there's a compromise between the two. I'm not really sure. It seems like we need to have more discussion as the board about what direction we want to go. Do any board members have input on that?
I'm so sorry. First of all, let me just apologize that I'm having a little bit of computer issues. But one thing that an observation that I had about the proposal that we're reviewing today is that there was the KTUA, and then there was a subcontractor, Suzanne Elledge, which is a local planning firm. One of the things that I had thought about when we brought this issue up at the workshop was that there are a number of local planning companies that have worked on Isla Vista planning issues. And that my thought is that we could, initially what I thought was we could engage one of those entities that is familiar with Isla Vista issues and familiar with planning issues to give advice and to provide that kind of strategic mentorship that I was envisioning. And I just wonder if it is worth it for to think about going back to some of these other local companies that have done work in Isla Vista and would not need as much time to kind of ramp up on the issues because they're already familiar with the issues. So that's one thing I wonder is if that could be something to think about, is to engage a local firm. Yes, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if that's a compromise, but there you go.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Deschler. Are there any other comments from the board? Director Freeman.
I don't think it matters, because I think we're essentially like having decisions and we're two countering motions. And it's like I want to bring that. I'm not saying this because I think that it affects the vote in some way, but just I make certain that however the normal procedure works. Rodney makes me realize I can't remember if it's substitute motions or something that you're only supposed to do if you fail to get a second. And the idea is that like while you're lingering with the first, or is it something that you do when you fail to achieve a vote on the thing? Is this like procedurally, it makes sure we don't mess up, but I don't think it affects anything. I'm not saying it because I think that when you have situations like that, if you have somebody who has an order dependent vote when they know the two things that are going on, it's really awkward anyway. But I just, yeah.
And I apologize if it's confusing. I mean, I'm willing to withdraw the motion. I guess I just kind of wanted to see if it would.
I wouldn't even say it's confusing. Actually, it seems intuitively obvious that should be kind of okay in an informal environment. But when you theoretically have formal rules, and I should have, as chair of policy committee, I should have a copy of the policies in an obvious place, because we do have something related to policies on this. But I don't know. Does Ross have a comment? Is it okay? I don't care what order votes occur in it. I just want to make sure that we don't mess up.
Sure. So
the board is using Rosenberg's rules, which is very common in California. And Rosenberg's rules differs from Robert's rules with respect to substitute motions. Robert's rules treats that as an amendment that triggers other parliamentary procedures, whereas in the case of a substitute motion, it is a motion that would supersede and substitute itself for the original motion. You have competing motions at this point, both with a motion and a second. So in order to take them in the correct order, you need to have a vote on the substitute motion to essentially replace it, the initial motion, and then a vote on whether that motion is to be the actual motion to be approved.
And for future reference, substitutes then, is this just like the hang time between the second and the vote where you have an opportunity to like essentially play the Magic the Gathering interrupt card in order to attempt to stack in a substitute motion before the vote occurs? Like you have the ability to slot that in there?
That is an apt and very nerdy and geeky way that I approve of to describe that, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So, and I guess I apologize for complicating it more. That wasn't my intention. I just kind of wanted to get my finger on the pulse of where my other colleagues are at, because I know that it's a complicated issue. So I'm willing to say to take the motions in the order that they were made, to be respectful to the maker of the motion, and see where we end up, if that's appropriate to the board. I'm seeing some nods. Director Flaherty.
All right, just to clarify, so the original motion was to postpone this discussion until we choose a parking one, or is it we would still, like, after we approve a parking, have an entire, basically like continue this conversation and put a pause on this until that's done, like in early-ish February?
Jonathan, you want to read back the original motion?
Yeah, the original motion is to postpone this item until after a consultant is selected for the parking study.
Okay. So if the board is ready, I think I'm going to go ahead and call the question on that motion right now. Jonathan, can you do a roll call for that motion?
My bad. Director Brandt.
No.
Director Flaherty.
Yes.
Director Freeman.
Yes.
Director Toplip.
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
Director Deschler.
Okay, so this is what happened. I went from my phone to my computer. What are we voting on?
My bad. And that's why I like had a slight pause, because I was
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. We're voting on your original motion to postpone.
Mine? Okay, then I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-1. Okay, nothing like moving a meeting along like calling a vote. I'm going to use that more frequently with y'all because I know we love to talk. Okay. Thanks everyone for that discussion, however complex it may have been. We're going to move to item 4.3, the mid-year financial update. And so I think we should alert Director Bertrand and bring him back in.
Yeah, I texted him to be ready. So.
Could I quickly say something?
Go ahead, Director Flaherty.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to say that this conversation was really helpful to me, and I really thank everyone for bringing your feedback. A lot of this stuff was topics that I hadn't considered before, and I'm really excited to continue this discussion in a month or so. And I also thank staff and the committee that I'm on too for everyone's hard work as well. I know that we all have the same goals for Isla Vista, so I'm happy that we can move forward together on this.
Thank you, Director Flaherty. Okay, we're going to move to item 4.3, the mid-year financial update, and I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So we're doing our mid-year financial update. Unfortunately, it's not complete because I don't have final numbers for our revenue. I'll get into that and explain it in a bit, but our expenditures are all complete. So I can at least go over where we're at expenditure wise. And if I had to summarize where we're at, it's very good. I'll go over some detail right now though. And I know that sometimes we don't want too much in the weeds detail on financial reports from what you've told me in the past. So I won't get too detailed. I'll give you the top line numbers. And then if you have more questions, we can go a little more into it. So on operations, we're pretty much on mark. We're less, about half our budget is spent there, and we're halfway through the year. So we're doing well. Operations staff is looking good. It's actually less than half right now for various reasons. We're on communications. This is kind of like, I don't want to call it, just Sydney's, but she handles a lot of this budget. And we're starting to spend it now. So this one is picking up a bit. So we're starting to do more communication work. We spent more now already than we might have spent last year. Office, you'll note that the office expense is beyond the budgeted amount, but that's because we delayed buying our technology from last year to this year. And we had planned to spend more, and we had budgeted this, and we won't have to spend anywhere near this moving forward. So we do have some additional technology needs. Maya's now on board, so I've got to get her equipment, but we're doing all right here. We're staying on progress of the budget we had talked about last June, the total budget of 14,000. We're way under that. And just to note as well, sorry I didn't note this, but the membership dues, the reason that's over is because CSDA raised their rates on us because we are now a bigger district. We used to be in their smaller range, and now our budget is bigger, and so we get charged more. In terms of operational, administrative, we're doing pretty good there too. Actually, our payroll fees, I'm very happy to see, are much lower since now we're on a bi-weekly schedule for everyone, and we're having less payroll issues where we have to do like a special payroll for someone who didn't send in their hours. So we're way under. We're at 2,000 only spent, and we'll hopefully spend only 4,000 for the year. It saves us $2,000. And then everything else is pretty on the mark for our operations. Community programs, as you can see, we've spent way less than we've originally anticipated. One of the reasons is because we only just a week ago hired someone under this salary item to work in the community center, community room area. And we haven't fully spent our programming budget because we haven't had someone around to help spend it. So this area is much less than originally budgeted, and for obvious reasons, for predictable reasons. Special projects, We're doing all right there. We've spent it is, I want to say it's actuals as of January 7th. There's a couple bills that just haven't been paid yet. As of January 7th, they raised this by a couple thousand, but 60,000 to 5,700 is where we're at with special projects. We're doing really well on the compost collective. We're pretty much also almost exactly at 50% of the budget through 50% of the year. So that's we're on track there to spend within our means. And we obviously haven't spent anything for our community festival because that's an RFP out right now. However, we also have our community garden fully spent. Rental housing mediation, it's just an incomplete. I haven't received bills from our mediator right now, and I didn't want to estimate anything. So we're waiting to get billed. Safety stations, we're also waiting to get billed for November, and I didn't want to estimate that because everything has been so up and down because of COVID. Sometimes there's less staffing or something like that. So I didn't estimate that, but safety stations we're not spending very much through August, September, October, because August was only 1 week. And then we're budgeted to have 3 sites, but we're still only have 2 sites. So I don't want to say we're doing well. We're spending within our means, but we're not spending our full plan yet. So we're hoping to get to that point where we can spend our full plan, which is the 3 locations. Interpersonal violence investigator, that's pretty consistent. We get the same bill every quarter, and she's been doing a great job. Parking study, we've spent $0. We're still analyzing that. None of the proposals are for 25,000. I'll tell you that much. They're for more, just to clarify. And then the STEP grant, this is not a full picture because the accounting on the STEP grant is more complicated. But we're definitely within our means there. This is what we did spend through before November. So you approved the bill today for KTUA for their work in November. So that's not included in here because we just approved that today. But the reason I brought it up is because that work did take place in that first half of the fiscal year, but it's just not in the actuals because we just approved it. The beautification program, we're doing pretty well there too. But when I say well, we're within our budget, but we haven't been able to fully spend what we've planned and budgeted there. We've had issues with staff turnover at both the program manager level and at the crew member level. We are now, as of today, fully staffed on the crew level. They've got now four crew members. However, everyone is out now sick due to exposure. So the program is now, going to go on a hiatus for a little bit, and we won't be spending budget for the next, however long we need to. We did not budget anything in this time. In public art, we just haven't had a way to spend it. And then finally, as we already had this conversation just a few minutes ago, but we had the 30,000 for the community plan, which we spent none of it yet. So the summary is that we had budgeted 1.459 million, and we've spent 400,000 just about. So we're definitely still in a situation where we're not spending our full budget, this time for different reasons than other years, but that's where we're at right now. Revenue projections, again, I don't want to say this is useless. It's just not as useful as it could be. I've got everything except electricity, which 3 out of the 4 that send monthly remittance. So the issue with the electricity, just to give you a quick update, I think I might have mentioned this at the last board meeting, but with the transition from Southern California Edison to California Community Choice Energy, there has been some sort of billing mishap where we're only getting like 40% of what we're normally receiving. Like this, you're seeing 29, 22, 26,000 for electricity. We're getting like 9,000 now, which is even way less than 40% potentially. So we're trying to resolve that. And I don't want to put in numbers that I'm going to guess in here, And we also don't have December numbers because we don't receive those until the end of January usually. So this is only 5 months of revenue, but in 5 months of revenue, we've received 433,000. So that's more than we've spent. So at the very least, if we're on a cash basis business, we have received more than we've spent. We know we're going to receive much more than this, and we're on track to exceed our projections on water and trash. Where you can see I've not gotten a report back yet on why the October trash collection jumped to 44,000 of a tax remittance compared to the normal 24,000 that we get in this area. And as you can see, the water billing has also climbed really steadily from 18,000 to now 27,000 in November that we received. I haven't received an explanation yet on why that is. I'll say the guess, though, is pretty average and the same as how it usually fluctuates throughout the year. It usually goes between as low as 6,000 to as high as 18,000, just based on usage because of it's cold. And it is a cold year, so maybe we'll get more of this. And then, so this not reflected in here yet because it's just not in Fin, and I'm just wanting to put in what's actually in our accounting system right now is the 53,000 from the state for COVID relief. So that's a separate, it's not our tax revenue. It is taxes, but it's not what we've raised. So that's our financial update. If I had to summarize it, we're doing pretty well. Things are good for us. We just have, our electricity tax to resolve, but that's a clerical issue that will resolve, not really an issue with what's being remitted. However, I will note that when I spoke to Community Choice Energy, they did anticipate that it would be lower a little bit. It won't be much lower, but that the cost to the user will be lower through them. And so the 8% we get on that is lower. So we don't know how much yet either. So that's why that's another reason I didn't make a guess, because I have no idea what that would be. I only have data on Edison, not on Community Choice Energy. So that's pretty much the financial report.
Thank you for that report, Jonathan. Do directors have questions for Jonathan about the report?
I have a question. This is just a general budgeting question that I don't know. So under the community center, you have a certain amount of money. You're not going to spend all that this year. Does it automatically stay in that account, or does it get repurposed at the end of the fiscal year into a general fund and then the board can direct it somewhere else, or does it just stay in that line item?
Great question. It goes into the fund balance, and I can tell you how much is in our fund balance right now. Let me share my screen again. We have a lot of fund balance. Okay, I'm just getting my memory straight. Okay, the year end 2020 to 2021, which is the last June fiscal year, we ended the year with 112,000 in our UCSB fund balance, and this is money we've gotten from UCSB to do various things. We are hoping to clear this out this year. That's a goal, and we're trying to use it before asking for more, kind of thing. We have 1.5 million in our in between. Oh, sorry. Let me retract that. We have 942,000 in our committed fund balance, and it's higher than normal because we added an extra 50,000 into our cumulative capital outlay, because that's the money we had budgeted for the community center renovations, and we're holding it there. And I just got the bill today to ask, hey, can you send us the 50,000? So this 50,000 will be gone, and it'll be back to 892, which is what our board policies say they should be. And these levels might adjust now that our revenue is getting bigger. Like our long-term strategic reserve is supposed to be like 6 months of revenue. But based as they were, a year ago is when we made the percentages. We're at 892,000 in our committed, which then gives us 585,000 in undesignated fund balance. And this is money that it has no specific purpose. And it's money that's sitting in our account that's over the many years that we haven't spent our full budget. It goes there. And then you also have the 102,000 from UCSB's pledge to us for any programs we mutually agree to. So I put this here as undesignated funds for reserve or investment. You have $687,000 right now to deploy on any investments or major initiatives, and it'll get bigger. It says 709,000, and it's partially because the UCSB pledge receivable gets bigger because we're using the old pledge from last year. Sorry, this is going to get a little complicated. In 1920, we received money from UCSB for the interpersonal violence investigator, for example. During COVID was 1920 when COVID started. That officer was removed from our duty for a few months when COVID began. We didn't spend that money. It stayed in our fund balance. And then we ended up not expending it last year. So we're just going to do it this year. So we're going to request less from UCSB this year for the public safety programs from their annual 200,000. I wish I could explain that more clearly, but so that's why UCSB goes up. And I'm going to assume that our undesignated fund balance, I don't want to guess, but based on the way spending and revenue is going right now, we're going to have more undesignated fund balance. And, you can see the jump from 1920 to 2021 was over $400,000 increase in what we didn't spend in that fiscal year. So there's a chance this can get to $1 million this year. I don't think so. But this can get pretty large by the end of, and our projection says no change, because obviously our projection assumes we will spend our whole budget when we make our budget at the beginning of the year. But yeah, there's as things are going, we will add to this. I could predict it going to 700 or 800,000.
Thank you, Jonathan. I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. This has been a very helpful presentation. When looking at the money that is undesignated right now, I'm really thinking about a lot of our community programming priorities with activating the Ivy Community Center, as well as the Spring Festival, and what is built off of those programs and the level of services that our community comes to expect when we are able to reopen and bring people together again. So I do think that, as you said, we are in a very good position. Circumstances that we weren't expecting led us to this position, but I think we are well positioned to really plan on how to strategically use this. And just thinking back from our first days in office back in 2017, this is a much different issue than we had back then. And at that time, it was, how do we get by with very, very limited funding? And we were able to do a really good job. So now with this funding that we have been able to save up, in addition to the ongoing revenue that's coming in, I think we're ready to really do a good job for the residents.
Definitely a topic for our budget committee, as that process will soon start again.
This is a great point, and thank you for that, Director Bertrand. I'll echo that. I think we're in a good financial position. It's always good to know that the fruits of our conservativeness with our tax dollars over the years, and to see it reflected like this, and that's a testament to all of us and to our staff for being very prudent with the appropriation and spending. I have a question for Jonathan and for Ross on the electricity. I know that there have been the two changes that we've talked about. There's the community choice energy, which will probably lower the cost to consumers and bring us cleaner energy, which is a great thing. We also know that Edison is raising their rates to distribute electricity independent of that. And I guess my question, and you might not know the answer off the top of your head, but is the utility user tax on that portion of people's bills as well, or is it just on the electricity itself?
a really good question. It seems like it's on the whole bill. And that's something where we want to maybe do an audit soon, as we've talked about, is auditing, are we getting our full amount, or maybe we're getting too much? I don't know, but we should, that's something that our auditors have brought up. It's something Bob used to bring up. Now with this issue with the transition, and it's messy, and we're already getting way less than we're owed. It could be a good chance to say, let's do an audit, and maybe we don't start with Edison because they're so hard. It'll take us a couple of years to do that, but we can at least start auditing the trash and water, which are our neighbors, just to see how this works more, and get a cleaner look at how do these bills go out, how are they charged, and how are they sent to us, and are we getting too much or are we getting too little? So it could be time to finally do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because each utility ultimately is going to apply the UUT a little bit differently based on the specifics, and the audit should reveal how it is that they itemize their costs, and it should also reveal what it is that they are doing, applying the 8% utility user tax to the actual end user to generate the tax revenue for the district. So I think that I agree with Jonathan. This is a good opportunity to do that, to get a handle on how each utility does apply and into what amount, both for how that's been done in the past to make sure that they've been doing it consistently, but also looking forward. It helps to solidify some of those projections when putting the budget together.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ross. And it's good to hear that. I like the idea of moving towards something like that. And I also know that our local utility partners have been great partners. This is a very unusual tax that we have. We're the only special district in all of California that can levy one. And I've definitely been impressed with their ability and willingness to work with our staff, with Jonathan and Ross, to implement everything. But I will also say I scratch my head when I see some of either the delays or the confusion from some of the larger utilities, which I know is a bigger piece of the pie or a piece of the apple to bite off. But I also see it. I see that as being really the top priority to try to figure out. So I know you guys are coordinating on trying to figure out the issue, and thanks for your work on that. Are there any other comments from board members? All right, I'll open up public comment. Is there any public comment on the financial status report? You can hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any final thoughts from directors? All right, seeing none, we will receive and file that report, and we will move to 4.4, the public engagement procedures for committees. And I'll hand this over to Jonathan to introduce.
Yeah, this is one of the things that came up in our last board meeting in terms of how we wanted to move forward with our board committees, in terms of having public members, or in terms of ad hocs meeting on an agendized basis. And so we had a lot of different discussion points at the last meeting of how we want to operate committees and how we want to present that information to the public. So it's really an open discussion to hear from you all. What are your preferences, and what are your thoughts on how we use our committees and how we operate them? And so then we can think about that and put something together. So we had just a brief discussion last time, so this is just a chance for a fuller discussion based on what we talked about.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. So with that, I'll open it up to board members if we have thoughts. I think what prompted this was our last discussion that we had in advance of the public events or the Spring Festival RFP that was being considered. So but I think that's good framing. But I also think that public engagement and ensuring that we're doing it before something comes to the board is good in and of itself, and something that we should be really attuned to. So I'll open up discussion from board members. Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Well, at the last meeting, there was a compromise that was brought up, which proposed to allow for the continuation of ad hoc committees, recognizing that they can be really useful for empowering board members to collaborate outside of our meetings on a specific project. But there was also the need to make sure that community members had an opportunity to interact with that work. And the compromise that was laid out was to allow for the ad hoc committees to continue to meet as ad hoc committees, but that they would be required to periodically hold public meetings, at which times community members could participate. And I think that's a really elegant compromise and allows for board members to be able to work in a way that is moving a project forward, but also having that public transparency and, importantly, public participation. So that's definitely something I'd like to support if folks are still interested in that model.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Are there other comments from board members? Director Freeman.
Yeah, I think that actually provides a lot of what was trying to be come out of this. So by the way, so this wasn't actually really said at the last meeting, but I don't think you'd mind if I say this, but the I brought this up at the last meeting, but I brought it up because of a hard poke from Mark. Mark had brought up during public comment the interest in being able to attend and have a better understanding of what's going on with the I'm not even certain. I will end up coming up with the wrong name for the set of committees, and that'll end up causing another problem. But for the committees that are involved in some of the event planning, and separately to that, he sent me a direct message, really poking me hard on the idea of potentially having the ad hoc committees be public meetings with required notices that people would be able to actually access. I sympathize quite strongly with such positions because I find that the ability to have for people to have access to meetings should take precedence over the efficiency of meetings. But I also can appreciate the certain aspects of organizing these committees. You set the committee in order to work on some particular contract, and having that contract be something that was very difficult to have a negotiation in public, albeit there have been options for closed sessions and things like that in certain circumstances. But even some of the, I appreciate some of the complexity there. And I think that the compromise, which for what it's worth, part of the reason why I bring up Mark is Mark doesn't seem to be here, and Mark seemed to agree to that compromise during that meeting. It seems to make sense to me. I will say that, so my involvement in politics in general, arguably, really had started being involved in the Library of Congress's triennial rulemaking process for the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And I had always found the process, and that was, I should say, that was the process that I kind of got indoctrinated into how politics could be. And that process is so gloriously open. That process involves a petition period whereby people are able to just put forward ideas. If you would want to just scribble a sentence on a napkin, essentially, and send it in, they will consider it as seriously as anything else. And then they will attempt to find people during the second round in order to become champions of those positions in order to provide legal background and commentary on it. Then they go into a round of trying to find people who will oppose the positions that were brought up during the first round. Then they have a round where they attempt to find people who will try to provide summaries of the positions and try to explain how the back and forth went. Then they realize that there are people who maybe during all of these months of written commentary might have something where they really need to do a demo in order to serve it, in order to do it justice. And so they take people send in like, I would like to be part of the actual hearings. And then they organize all of those people, and then they come up with a schedule, and they ask you, what part of the country are you in? What are your schedule like? And then they try to organize hearings in 2 different locations on opposite sides of the countries that try to match as many people's schedules as they can. And they do all of this. And at the end of it, I'm there in person with the person, and it's clear that the person from the Copyright Office has actually read all the material and is quizzing me on individual sentences. And it was just this glorious feeling of public participation. And then I come to local government, and I go to the county, and the county is like, yeah, this topic came up a week ago. It got agendized for today. You have there are a lot of people here today. I guess you have a minute and a half in order to provide commentary. Go. And then they kind of ignore it and move on. And so I've really thought it's just so important to take the time and to provide numerous opportunities for people to become part of the process, and make certain that there's time for people to provide written commentary if they can't come to meetings, to be accommodating for people who have these things. And I think for a lot of the things that we do, we have that ability. We aren't in that much of a rush, and yet we still, even here at the IVCSD, we still sometimes end up in situations where we have an agenda that comes out 3 days before the meeting. Thankfully, we don't pick people on time. That did come up though when our district got formed, and we kind of opted against it. And I'm very happy with the way that Spencer runs the meeting as far as allowing people to have time for saying things. But I think like I was really sympathetic for Mark's position when he came to me and poked me about it, as well as what he was saying during the meeting, because it does have sometimes this feeling of like there's stuff happened with relation to the events, and now there's a contract, and you don't have much time. You don't have much time for this contract, and you approve it. And it's like, maybe if there had been more opportunity for people to have been involved in the committee meetings leading up to it, there was a lot. There were a lot of meetings, as far as I know. At least there was certainly a lot of time the committee was supposed to be meeting. I presume there were a lot of committee meetings. A lot of opportunity for people like Mark to have gotten involved. And so just trying to figure out how to advocate for the idea of let's not try to go as fast on the decisions in order to provide the best opportunities to get the most information from the public, and to provide the most opportunities of feeling like people are engaged. And that's what I'm trying to go for. So I think that this idea of having ad hoc committees for some of these things, and then trying to kind of encourage them to maybe even have more, we'll actually set up we're, instead of just we talked, even if it's an ad hoc committee, it doesn't have to be at that point. Maybe there's like a place where you can quickly get like, there's a Zoom meeting that's coming up, and people could choose to join, and they could watch or whatever. I don't know. I think that we can do better. And for what it's worth, it's not just about the, it kind of got catalyzed because of Mark's interest in the event committee and poking me about this whole sort of thing. But actually, I kind of like the way that it was agendized today, because I also think deeply about that parking committee that I'm on, and that this is something that I think is a very intense and very politicized topic in our area. We're trying to now reach out and get feedback from a bunch of people, and that we're trying to balance things too. And I can, it's like, I kind of think it might be cool if those meetings were more open, and there were more opportunity for people to join them. But I also appreciate that there's the occasional person we want feedback from who kind of probably won't want to do their feedback at the public meeting. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope partly with the longer explanation and some of the setup, maybe what I'm saying might sound hopefully reasonable. But yeah, maybe inspiring even. I don't know.
Maybe even inspiring. No, thank you for your comments, Director Freeman. Do other board members have comments they want to share? Director Topliff.
I'm just interested exactly in how we're thinking about doing this. So we have an ad hoc committee. There's a few people on it. We email around, figure out a time when we can get together. Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be on Zoom? We set an ad hoc meeting, and then we publicize somewhere that it's happening and people can join us. Is that what we're thinking? And when you talked, Ethan, about sometimes yes and sometimes no, I mean, do we have some sense of a formula, or I'm just kind of curious about how to actually operationalize that, which I think is a good idea.
Go ahead, Director Bertrand.
Thank you. Yeah, so as far as just regular meetings of the ad hoc committee, I think those would continue to be scheduled as they are now, and there would not be a public noticing per se. However, staff should come back with a recommended framework where if we have an ad hoc committee, the ad hoc committee should have X number of public meetings or some sort of framework for to make sure that the ad hoc committee is interfacing with the public. Like, for example, our nightlife planning ad hoc committee, when we were doing our first phase, we had a number of meetings just among our ad hoc committee members, but then we had a community meeting. So that was kind of separate from our internal meetings. And I think that with a ad hoc committee like the Spring Festival ad hoc, you could continue to have your working group meetings, but then figure out a time when, okay, we're going to go out to the community, and then staff can help publicize that and get people there. So I hope that answers your question where we don't need to notice all of the meetings, but I think we do have to be intentional about making sure that we are providing some opportunities for public involvement.
So it's kind of a special format meeting.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts about how much notice should occur and what the notice looks like?
So, I mean, I think since we want folks there, if we can give them adequate notice of a week or something like that, and making sure that we're sending it out to our full listserv, I think that's a good faith effort to get people there. And I know with our community engagement director, Sydney, she's done a great job of publicizing our various public meetings. But I think that as long as everyone agrees that this is something we want to do, having the public meetings will be an easy complement to the hard work of steering these projects through an ad hoc committee. And Jonathan, do you have anything to add to that?
I all of this makes sense. I do, I did feel inspired by what Jay was saying, and there is a good way to do this, and we have some good examples too in the past. We even did our ad hoc meeting for our budget one year, ended up, noticing an actual meeting for our one of the events. So it's possible, and I think one thing we should get back to doing though, and it might slow things down more. I don't know if I want to bring this up, but we used to pass resolutions to create our ad hoc committees that then would lay out the duties, the length of time, and maybe in that it could say this committee will have 3 public meetings, or we might want to, one might be more of an internal one, like dealing with our staff salary ranges last time. That might not needed to have a whole community meeting like that. Maybe it would have, but you could prescribe in a resolution, this committee is important. It needs to do X, Y, and Z. So maybe we should get back to that to formalize our ad hoc committees too, and as part of this.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Bertrand and Jonathan. And I'll second that the way that I've been thinking about it is exactly in line with how our finance committee used to operate. It used to be an ad hoc committee. It's been a standing committee for a couple of years now. But even when it was an ad hoc committee, it would still have a public hearing where there was collecting feedback from members of the public and allowing people to participate, reviewing the different financial information. It's just that at the time, by keeping it an ad hoc committee, board members could still communicate and collaborate on things. There was a greater need for that in the finance realm at the time because we were literally putting together a budget template. I think definitely the first year, and then the second year as well when we adjusted it. So that's kind of, I guess, what I'm thinking about in interpreting Director Bertrand's motion.
I'm happy to make a motion if you like, or
not motion, just proposal. You're welcome to make a motion. Maybe let's hear from Director Deschler first.
Yeah, I just let me put my hand down. What I really appreciate what Ethan said. I think there's always a balance and a tension between wanting to work in an ad hoc environment, be productive, get things done, versus sometimes versus public engagement. And I think that, part of the elective process is that in the representational process is that you represent people who give you their opinion, and you work with people and you hear from them when you're at the grocery store and when you're tabling and that kind of thing. And that's how people have meaningful input. I think, so I have a couple of suggestions. I like the idea of having, I thought what Ethan and Catherine and Marcos did on the nightlife committee was so great. They did their meetings, they had their meetings internally, and then they went and they had a public meeting and got really good feedback. And so I love that model. And I wonder if there's a way of just saying that each ad hoc committee has a quarterly meeting. And then it's scheduled, right? And there's that. The other thing I think would be very helpful is to maybe it's already on the website, but list the ad hoc meetings, ad hoc committees, and then the members on those meetings, so that people know that they can reach out to directors on certain issues because they're part of this committee. So I think that's important. And then also, every time we have a meeting, we talk about the work that we're doing. And so we might even want to think about using that section of our regular evening meetings to talk about some of these ad hoc meetings coming up, or some of the work that we're doing in ad hoc meetings, so that people can meaningfully engage with the members who are on those committees. So those are just some of my suggestions.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. Are there other comments from board members? Well, seeing that, I really like all the feedback that we got on this. I think this is an important task for us to be undertaking, and will, I think, produce much better policy and much better results. So with that said, I think Director Bertrand had a motion that he was ready to make.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate what Director Deschler said. That was really helpful. I would move to direct staff to return with a recommended policy for requiring ad hoc committees to hold a certain number of public meetings during the duration of the committee's work, and to direct staff to increase access to information on ad hoc committee activities. And Jonathan, I can send you that motion if that's helpful.
I got half.
Okay, I'll start over then. So direct staff to return with a recommended policy for requiring ad hoc committees to hold a certain number of public meetings throughout the term of their work, and to direct staff to increase access to information on ad hoc committee activities.
All right, there's been a motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Made by Bertrand, seconded by Deschler. With that, we'll open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on the motion? And I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I just made it in time to public comment, and I just wanted to say I heard the tail end, and I support this motion, and I support the discussion that was had. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Mark. Are there other requests to speak from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any final thoughts from the board before we call the question? Director Deschler.
I was just going to say, but I didn't blurt it out, so I'm getting better at not blurting. A meeting just isn't a meeting if Mark's not here, and he came in just in time. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I was missing you too, Mark. Great to see you here. Okay, so with that, we're going to call the question. Jonathan, can you do a roll call vote?
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Topliff?
Yes.
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're now going to move to reports. First, we'll start with reports from members of the board. Do any board members have reports they'd like to share? Director Freeman.
I have kind of a weird report in that that camera that I've been using for doing the hybrid meetings had one thing that was particularly annoying, which is when you would see it in the Zoom window, it was always a little bit smaller because it was getting letterboxed and then re-pillar boxed. And so I did a day trip driving in the morning and back to Las Vegas to go to the Consumer Electronics Show to find the people who make the camera, because in my experience, that is the best way to get a contact with the engineering team. And I managed to find a person there who actually seemed very excited about actually getting that fixed, and told stories about things that had come up at the last event that he was at that the engineers actually fixed that were a similar sort of issue, where they wanted to be able to mount it on a ceiling and it was the video was upside down, and they were like, yeah, we just fixed that in the next update. This seems like a really simple thing for us to fix. It's a South Korean company, so I think that they might not be focused as much on Zoom as some of the other things. And so I'm excited about getting that fixed. But that's my kind of silly update.
You are a very brave man. That's all I can say. To go to Las Vegas, to go to the Consumer Electric Show in a COVID, environment.
And particularly given that I keep thinking that I got COVID 2 years ago when I went to CES. I found out 2 months later that there were it was 2 months after the pandemic started that apparently it seems like there actually was COVID going around at the Consumer Electronics Show and everything. But I really just went in wearing an N95 mask in order to go talk to that one booth. Then I left and drove back. So.
Well, it's great news. I don't think that I've ever said this for something like this before, but thank you for your service, Director Freeman. Okay, I'm gonna go to Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. I just want to comment a little bit on the resources available for folks to stay healthy during the pandemic right now in Isla Vista. Over the weekend, I got to work with Sydney to help distribute test kits from the community center. We distributed about 200 test kits, and they went really quickly. I walked over there a few minutes before 10, our start time, and there was already a line around the block. And within 10 minutes, we distributed all of the kits, and there were still a lot of people in line and a lot more on their way. So that just shows how many folks are really looking to have access to testing. And there's a national shortage, but I think our community is doing the best to distribute the limited number of kits that do come in. And thanks to the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department for distributing those to community organizations and local government agencies. It's a great partnership. I also want to give kudos to IV Youth Projects and Public Health for hosting community vaccination clinics. I went to one probably a little more than a month ago for my booster, and it was a really amazing experience. And it was great to see so many IV residents there, especially families with kids at IV elementary school. And I know that they had another clinic tonight, which looks well attended as well. I see that UCSB is setting up a vaccination clinic at Embarcadero Hall. Saw a lot of foot traffic going in that direction today. So in general, I get the sense that IV residents are doing the right thing and taking caution to stay healthy. I know all of us are fatigued at this point, and we're entering year 3, and I think everyone's a bit concerned, but we're getting through this together. So thanks to everyone who's helping get resources out here.
Thank you for that report, Director Bertrand. And a big thank you to the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department for the heroic work that they're doing right now. All right, are there any other reports from board members? Okay, I'll give a quick report, just one thing. The nomination period for special district members to LAFCO is open right now, and the deadline is later this week. Jay is the LAFCO member. That's a position that he runs for. He has to be nominated by the presiding officer of his board, just as other candidates could as well. And then the different boards of all the special districts in Santa Barbara County each have one vote, and he was elected, I believe, in 2019 is when you were first elected, and the term is now up, and so I had hoped to put an actual item on the agenda to give a more full update of this, but I do plan on submitting the nomination form to nominate Jay for re-election to that position, and we'll be turning that in tomorrow morning. So just wanted to keep everyone in the loop. And maybe at a future meeting, if Jay wants to give an update just on things that have been going on at LAFCO, that'd be something that people are interested in.
You also remind me of another, as oftentimes happens with me, I get reminded of things that I should bring up by other people's reports. I have been nominated for the Santa Barbara County chapter of the Community Special Districts Association board for their vice president's position. I had of the various people that they talked to about this, I had the very important, very unique qualification, which was that I was willing to do it. And so as far as I know, there will not be anybody else who is attempting to get this position. And so it is highly likely that by the end of the month, I will be voted into that position.
Well, great to hear. We'll give you congratulations once it's done. Okay, we're going to move now to 5.2, reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Are there any committees that have a report? Seeing none, we'll move to report from District Council.
Thank you, President Branch. Just I think 3 quick things. Obviously, our office continues to monitor the COVID-19 situation as it applies to the board and the board meeting in person versus remotely. Due to the prevalence of Omicron and the Santa Barbara County Department of Public Health's advisories, we, in conjunction with working with Jonathan, I'll be providing a proposed resolution to allow the board to continue to meet remotely through the February meetings. That'll be coming up on the next agenda, the second meeting in January. The other item is we are happy that the district received the funding that it did for COVID relief, and we worked with Jonathan to go through some very vague rules and regulations for how to apply for that, and ultimately we're pleased that the amount came in at the asked for value initially. So it's good to hear that the board is going to be able to use that money to help bolster its efforts in supporting the community moving forward. So we're happy to be a part of that process. And that's it. That concludes my my report. It's very short tonight.
Thank you, Council. We appreciate your work, especially on the COVID relief. Thank you. We'll move to report from General Manager.
Cool. Well, Sydney is not here. She'll start to be able to make it back to board meetings because she had a commitment for a couple months, but she'll be back. But in terms of what she's working on, she's got our first newsletter ready to go out pretty soon onto our listserv, and we're transitioning to Constant Contact finally in a couple weeks. So we're getting more professional. And she has, like I mentioned earlier, she has a lot to do this quarter on STEP outreach. We have 80,000 to spend, not the whole thing this next couple months, but like I said, the peak is going to be over the next through now through June. So she's got a lot on her plate in terms of the STEP grant outreach. And one thing she's doing that's pretty exciting as part of that is doing another lighting walk, which we haven't done in 3 to 4 years now. So that'll be a community engagement opportunity. Compost Collective and Ivy Beautiful are both currently offline due to not being able to staff the programs, due to staff being out sick. So hoping to get those back online on next week or so. And also as a note for Ivy Beautiful, like I said, we do have now a full crew. We only had 1 or 2 people for most of the last 3 to 4 months. But now we've got a full crew. But however, Miranda, who was the staff support for the program, did move on to a different organization. So we're starting from scratch with some new people now we're working with. Mediation program. We've actually had a steady stream of cases and actually successful mediations in January so far. It's always very hard to get people to even agree to mediate, even though we get so many requests. But we actually had some mediations happen in the last week. So great news. And we're doing more outreach, and Sydney's making a special flyer for that program to help explain it. We're still needing to fill the community advisory board and finding the people to sit on that so that we can have a first meeting. But now that Maya's here, I'll get back to that, since my focus was more on getting her up to speed with devoting time to that area. And we had our building assessment for 970 and 976 Del Mar happen last Tuesday. It was 4 hours long. The county was there. I was there. Our inspector was there, and they had 2 people or 3 people there to do the different specialty assessments. So I feel good about how that went, and hope they'll get our report to us pretty soon. As you saw with STEP grant, we released a small temporary coordinator position to assist Sydney, essentially like an intern, to help her with the direct outreach. And that's something that's spelled out in the STEP grant that we would do, is hire outreach workers to directly talk to the community. And our survey is almost done to be released to the public, our transportation survey. We heard a lot about what the parking committee is doing today, so I won't report on that. We have in terms of the alternative response to armed policing project, our interns were really interested in taking that up for the next few months. And what I asked them what they would want to do with something like that. And they felt that there are a lot of organizations in the community who are working on it, and they'd like to collect that information so that we have a good inventory of what else is going on and what the different organizations are wanting to have proposed policy-wise. So I thought that would be helpful for our board to know where others in the community might be at if we want to take future steps on it. I did not mention this yet, but yesterday we had to delay the deadline for the Spring Festival proposals because no one sent in a proposal. I did hear from a few of potential proposals that they would if they had more time, but it was the holidays for the majority of the time that was out. So we gave it an extra week, and I did receive word that 3 proposals could make it in a week. So we'll see what happens. Please send me your dates and preferences and agenda items for a retreat. I'm looking at maybe now later in February, which is not the worst thing, because last time it was early mid-February, so we wouldn't really be that off track, and hopefully we wouldn't have as much COVID going around where we can do an outdoor masked kind of deal. But we'll keep an eye on that. But that's where it's at in my mind right now, is mid to late February, and I'm receiving. Please send me your availability especially on weekends for the next month or 2, so I can find a date that would work for us. I mentioned to you all that our budget process is about to start soon. So, that does consume a lot of board time and staff time and district time. Remember last year, we really got into the budget process. So just be forewarned, that's coming now. It's like it never ends pretty much, but it's coming again. Our consultant is right now helping. So again, just the assistant general manager consultant is taking on a lot of the administrative and operational work that Deborah was doing. So they helped me in terms of our staff and our board meeting the staff training requirements by the state, ethics and sexual harassment. So they helped me get that organized. We're official with our 457B plan. And one thing we're trying to work out with them is how do we include what the benefits the employees are owed from when they were hired and promised the retirement benefit, but this wasn't just implemented until today. So don't even want to get into how complicated that is. It's complicated. Let's just say that. I thought it would be simple, but it's not. We got our credit card. It's really awesome. It looks nice. But before I touch it or before I use it, I want us to approve policies on, credit card use, because, we want to keep, it's a big deal, and we want to make sure there's zero fraud and zero expectation there'll be fraud, and, very, very good government. We want to make sure this is very clean. So we'll make policies before we spend it. And then the last thing that Deborah was working on, or not the last thing, but one of the things she was working on that they're now taking up for us is putting together a policy for memorials and recognition for the district. And so Father John's anniversary is coming up in only a month and a half. So I asked them to have that done before then, so we can take that action that we had planned. So that's pretty much it that we've been working on. It's really only been like 5 or 8 working days since the last board meeting, because I was on vacation the last 2 weeks of December, or 1 week of December. So
good. Well, thank you for that update, Jonathan. Definitely a lot going on. Very excited to hear about the district card coming in. I'll share with the rest of the board. Now that I'm a co-signer on our financial system, I get to see the reimbursements and sign off on them. And let me tell you, it's a lot, and it's great to know that we won't have to be using that system anymore now that we're approved for the card and have it in hand. Great news. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Director Deschler.
I just wanted to make a comment about the hires that you've made, Jonathan. It's just really great to see the enthusiasm for new staff. And I see that Maya, God love her, she's been here the whole time. Hi, Maya. So I just wanted to say, it seems like you've made some really good hires, and I know that that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work onboarding staff and managing staff, especially new staff. And I'm sure that's taking a lot of your time. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. It seems like you've hit some home runs.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm really happy with everyone who's joined. Carly and Maya and Sydney have all been very strong additions to the team.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. I certainly concur with that. Are there any other questions or comments from board members? All right, well, seeing none, our next meeting will take place on January 25th, 2022, here on Zoom at 6 p.m. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second.
Made by Deschler, seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment for their board discussion? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brent?
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty?
Yes.
Dr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Topliff?
Yes.
Dr. Aguilar?
Yes.
And Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Dr. Deschler?
Yes.
All right, have a good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'll see you soon.
Hi, everyone.
Happy New Year. Take care.